The Dallas Cowboys traded to get George Pickens. They paid $27.298 million to keep him for 2026. And then their own executives stood up and told the world the team has no plans to give him a long-term contract this summer. They traded for him, they tagged him, and they already told him he has no future in Dallas. That is not a football decision. That is a trap. Start with the trade itself, because that is where this story gets strange. The Dallas Cowboys did not stumble into George Pickens. They went and got him. They gave up real assets to acquire a wide receiver who was already one of the most physically gifted players at his position in the entire NFL. This was not a waiver wire pickup. This was not a cheap flyer on a player nobody else wanted. The Cowboys made a move for Pickens because they believed he could be a difference maker for their offense. George Pickens, coming out of Pittsburgh, had a reputation that followed him everywhere. Big frame, exceptional hands, the kind of contested catch ability that teams spend years trying to find. He had flashed genuine receiver talent in Pittsburgh even when the offense around him was not making things easy. Scouts around the league were not questioning his physical tools. They were questioning the fit and the situation. Dallas answered by making him their situation. So, when the Cowboys front office made that call, made that trade, brought Pickens into their building, they sent a message to him and to the rest of the league. This is our guy. We are investing in this. What happened next is the part nobody expected. Stay here, because what Stephen Jones said publicly about Pickens is the moment this entire situation changed. The Cowboys placed the franchise tag on George Pickens. The number attached to that tag for 2026 is $27.298 million. That sounds like a lot of money. And on its own, it is. But here is what the franchise tag actually does, and why it is not the compliment it looks like from the outside. The franchise tag is a one-year tender. It locks a player to a team for a single season at a set figure. The player has no choice. They cannot test free agency. They cannot shop their value to other teams. They either sign the tag or they hold out, and holding out comes with its own set of financial penalties since tag money only accrues when a player is on the active roster participating. The tag gives all the power to the team and almost none to the player. For Pickens, signing that $27.298 million tag means playing all of 2026 in Dallas with zero contract security beyond December. When the season ends, he is a free agent again. He starts from zero. He goes through the same process again. The Cowboys get a full season of his production and carry no long-term financial obligation to him when it is over. That is the deal the franchise tag creates. Now here is the part that makes it worse for Pickens. Under NFL rules, there is typically a negotiating window after a franchise tag is applied. Teams and tagged players can work toward a long-term extension during that window. It gives the player a path to real security. It gives the team a chance to lock up a player they just tagged before he hits the open market again. The Cowboys closed that door before anyone could even open it. Cowboys executive Stephen Jones did not hint at this. He did not let it leak through unnamed sources. He stated it directly and on the record. The Cowboys will not negotiate a long-term contract with George Pickens this summer. Ride that again. The team traded for this man. They paid $27.298 million to tag him. And their own executive then told the world publicly that Dallas has no intention of sitting down to build a long-term future with the player they just paid all that money to keep for 1 year. This is not a negotiating tactic. Teams use silence and ambiguity as leverage when they are trying to manage contract talks. They avoid making public statements that show their hand. Stephen Jones did the opposite. He made the statement clearly, which means the Cowboys are not worried about losing leverage with Pickens because they have already decided they are not giving him a long-term deal. The statement was not a mistake. It was the plan, and Pickens heard it. His camp heard it. Every agent and GM around the league heard it. What that statement did is strip away any illusion Pickens might have had about what Dallas sees in him. He is not their future. He is their 2026 option. They needed a wide receiver for this season. They used the resources they had to get one, and they structured the arrangement so they carry zero risk beyond December. That is not how you treat a player you believe in long term. That is how you treat a rental. Remember what this video is about. The Cowboys made Pickens their most expensive problem. Here is what that looks like from the inside. Put yourself in Pickens' position for one moment. You are a young wide receiver with real talent and real NFL production. You get traded to a new team. That part is not fully in your control. You report, you adjust, you start learning a new offense, new coaches, new teammates. You sign a $27.298 million tag because the alternative is sitting out and losing money. You show up ready to work. And then the team's executive tells the entire football world that they have no plans to extend you. There is no way to play a full NFL season in a relaxed, focused state after hearing that from your own organization. Pickens will walk into every practice, every film session, every game knowing that Dallas is using him for 12 months and planning to let him walk. Every time he gets hit, every time he fights through a tough stretch in the season, every time contract conversations come up around the league and reporters ask him about his future in Dallas, the answer is already public. Stephen Jones already gave it. That is a miserable situation for any competitor. For a receiver who already had a reputation for being outspoken and direct, it is a situation that will produce friction. The Cowboys traded for Pickens knowing his personality. They tagged him knowing they were not going to build with him. They created a combination that almost guarantees tension inside that locker room before the season even gets halfway through. And there is still another layer to this that most people are not talking about yet. Here is what the Cowboys did not think through, or chose to ignore. George Pickens is going to play 2026 as a free agent audition. Every catch, every route, every contested ball he wins is a highlight reel for his next contract negotiation, not with Dallas, with whoever signs him in 2027. He is not building toward a Cowboys future. He is building toward his own future. And those two things are not always the same. A receiver who knows he is leaving has different incentives than a receiver who is invested in what the team is building. That does not make Pickens a bad teammate. It makes him a human being responding to the situation his team created. When the organization publicly removes the possibility of a long-term deal, they remove the player's reason to think about anything beyond the end of the season. That is the dynamic inside the Cowboys' receiver room for all of 2026. And the Cowboys did this to themselves. They traded for him. They tagged him. They made the statement. Every part of this situation came from decisions made inside the Dallas front office, and now they have to manage a 2026 season with a receiver who is playing for another team's money while wearing Dallas colors. That is not a normal kind of tension. That is the kind of tension that produces sideline moments, that produces hard press conference questions, and that produces a situation where one bad stretch of games turns into a full story about a receiver who does not want to be there, coming back to where we started. The Cowboys traded for George Pickens. They paid $27.298 million to keep him, and Stephen Jones stood up and confirmed publicly that Dallas has no plans to give him a real future in that building. They did not just tag George Pickens. They tagged him, told him he has no future in Dallas, and handed him a countdown clock that runs out the moment the 2026 season ends. That is not a football plan. That is a rental agreement. And George Pickens is the one paying the price for it.